You'll very often see these three definitions of a cloud service used: IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. Infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. And I want to define each of those three here. The slide I'm about to show you is from my Pluralsight course titled Modernizing Your Websites with Azure Platform as a Service. And I spent a lot of time in that course showing you how to move applications into Microsoft's PaaS offerings. Throughout this course, I'm going to give you a number of different Azure examples, but I'm also going to make sure that I talk about the cloud in much more generic terms. Because whether it's Microsoft's or Amazon's or Rackspace's or whoever's, these same principles apply. Let me show you how I define these three models. And in fact, we'll start by looking at the old way of doing things, the on-premise model. So let's think about everything that you actually have to manage in an on-premise data center. Everything from the networking through to the storage, obviously the servers themselves, if you're using any virtualization, and then the operating system, the middleware, things like the web server or the database server, runtime data applications, all of the software which then actually runs on this underlying infrastructure. And all of it is your responsibility. You, as the organization running this on-premise data center, are responsible for the whole lot. Now let's start moving across this spectrum of cloud models. And we'll start with IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service. Now, when you have an IaaS model, you only manage everything from the OS up. In the case of Azure, Microsoft manages everything beneath that. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's Azure or AWS or one of the other providers. The point is that in an infrastructure as a service model, that provider is doing the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization. And you then get the logical bits that sit on top of that. Now, in some ways, as the consumer of the service, this may not actually look a lot different to when it's an on-premise data center. You still remote into the machine, you have operating system level control, you configure your middleware and your runtime, and you deploy your apps. But what fundamentally changes is that there's no one left in the organization consuming the service who can go and plug things into the server, change any physical configurations, see blinking lights on machines. None of those things are possible because now the cloud provider is responsible for them. Now, for some people, they look at this as a loss of control, yet on the other hand, this is also a loss of responsibility, which means that someone else is taking care of it for you. As we progress through this module and the rest of the course, we'll talk about the pros and cons of that. For now though, let's move on to the next model. And that's PaaS, Platform as a Service, and it goes even further than IaaS. Because what's happening in a PaaS model is that the cloud provider is giving you, for example, web hosting, where you have the ability to publish a web application, say, onto an IaaS server as you'd get with Azure, but you don't have the ability to interact directly with things like the operating system. You can't install service packs and patches. That is the cloud provider's responsibility. Same with the middleware. If it is IaaS, you don't have the ability to interact with that as you would middleware that's running on-prem or in infrastructure as a service. You may still have some configurability by virtue of the applications you deploy, or perhaps by virtue of their management portal, but as with IaaS, when I talked about networking through virtualization, this is something which not only do you no longer have access to, but you no longer have responsibility for. And that can be a really good thing when it comes to unburdening an organization of the skills and resources required to manage the service. Let's go all the way to the right, all the way through to SaaS. And once we get into software as a service, there's really nothing left to manage. So think about the sorts of software as a service that we might use on a very regular basis. Salesforce.com is a canonical example of software as a service. Not only are you not managing any of the network or storage or servers, you're not managing any of the middleware or runtime either, you're not even managing the application, not in the context of actually writing code. you're configuring the service such that it can be tailored to your organization. The cloud provider, again, such as Salesforce.com, is taking care of everything for you. As you go through these paradigms from left to right as you see them on the screen, the cloud provider takes more and more responsibility, you have less and less to manage, and you get further and further away from the traditional on-premise model. We'll refer back to IaaS, PaaS and SaaS as we move through the course. For now though, let's move on to something different. Let's go and take a look at cloud deployment models.